Morning. So is anybody who's ever been inside of a 2-block radius of me knows that I only use microphones ironically? Couldn't whisper in a hurricane. Welcome to my life. This is part of my ongoing quest that I'm really tired of like boring corporate headshots. So to try to I'm trying to start a new trend of just like being weird and different. The favorite slide that everybody has, which you've already seen once, anytime I do any talk, you can actually download this whole thing. Please take a photo of this and don't be that person who emails me in 3 months and be like, I know you put that on the screen and I really want to do this and change my team, but I forgot what it was. Plus I keep it really confusing that it's my name plus the name of the event. So my favorite was literally like last week a dude emailed me. He's like, yeah, I was at the How conference. He was like, what was that link? I was like, Stephen Gates / How. Okay, we have 35 minutes, 96 slides. I'm gonna go really fast. This is going to be awesome. A little bit about me, because I think that one of the things I was thinking about this is that one of the things I don't get to talk about enough is leadership, because I've spent my entire life working on this in a whole bunch of different ways. But I think one of the things that I've really kind of organized around lately is that my entire career, everything I've ever done from the time I was 2 years old on, is that I have never fit in. There has never been a script to my career. There has never been anything like that. So I'm just gonna kind of give you a brief walk down memory lane about what that means. The first was literally starting as a little kid. So I grew up as a child in my father's advertising agency. My dad was a creative director. A good tip if you're ever presenting, start with photos of you as a child. So this is me at 2 years old standing on the feed tray of the 700-pound cast iron letterpress that sat in my parents' basement, which means that my dad, oh yeah, no, trust me, it gets worse. So that we would go down there and actually we would write my own storybooks. And then my dad and I would then typeset them and we would print them. I think, you know, child services at this point, right, yeah, but child labor and handling lead, two things that go over really, really well. Explains a ton about me. Also, it was great. So basically, I was a hipster by the time I was in kindergarten because I had been self-publishing for years by the time that I got to school and was incredibly confused why other kids were buying books. How, like, I didn't know Brooklyn existed, but it was great. You know, from there, I really went and then started working at my dad's agency. I've been a paid designer since I was 12. Growing up around adults, right? Like other kids had paper routes, I was cutting Ruby Lith and doing paste up keys and a whole bunch of stuff most of you can Google to figure out what it is I'm talking about. So came out of that like joy of teenage angst, went to Syracuse, studied computer graphics, did this weird thing called digital whenever design was like centered and bold was design. Got hired by McCann Erickson and they were like, look, we've got this agency in Dallas, they've got a ton of really great clients, ton of old school like ad guys, no idea what digital is, can you go speak to both sides of that? Was an amazing ride. I think I got to do tons of really great work. I got to rebuild brands like Subaru whenever at that point it was like the slightly less ugly Volvo. And then actually got to like turn it into a really great utilitarian brand. But I think that the client that undoubtedly changed my life was American Airlines. I had been working on them for years, but there was one day that I was never the same from. And because American Airlines was my client on September 12th. To have to spend weeks in meetings trying to figure out how do you keep a company which is already on the verge of bankruptcy together at a time in American history that had no emotional go-by. We had no idea what to do. How do you keep that company together? How do you keep them in business at a time whenever nobody wants to be in like the big metal tube flying through the sky business anymore? And coming out of that, I really realized that for me, building a brand was a much more interesting kind of problem than building an ad for a brand. So like I've done with most of my career, completely confused all my friends by doing, and remember, this was 14 years ago, whenever I said I'm gonna go work for in-house teams. And they're like, oh great, so you're gonna go retire. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. But so then for me, I did. I went to become the agency guy at a hotel company and so spent 9 years building the global brand design team at Starred Hotels and Resorts. Fascinating time. For the first 3 years, everybody told me I was really kind of crazy and stupid. It's amazing whenever your work shows up in the first Apple keynote, how then they all want to know if you're hiring. But so I think we pioneered a lot of really cool stuff. We pioneered mobile check-in, the ability to actually use your phone and then ultimately your Apple Watch to be able to check into your hotel. Completely redefined loyalty with the Starred Preferred Guest program. I got to build brands like W and Westin and Sheraton and tons of really great ones. But one of the things as a leader that I will always be the most proud of was the team whenever I got there, honestly, they were probably making, at best, posters for HR for the elevators. And so 9 years whenever I left, those same leaders had done things like this. So we were one of the first teams, one of the first 6 outside teams that was called in by Johnny Ive to work on Apple Watch 4 months before it was public. Most exhilarating and completely terrifying thing in the world is to work on unreleased Apple hardware. Their lawyers are, no joke. But it was, I mean, again, I think that the work that we were able to do, and again, the leadership on day 1 was the exact same the day that I left. So this ability to, like, to get better work, you need different people, I'm here to tell you, is bullshit. And so then I decided, you know what, I'm a masochist. Let's go become the first head of design in the 210-year history of Citibank. They've never had a design team before. That'll be a fun thing to go do. So, but over the course of that, did some really interesting things. I rolled out design thinking to a 300,000 person company. So that again, like right now they're having the year of empathy. So again, the ability to completely reposition a monolith of that size. Went through, completely built a design system from scratch for them. So a lot of really interesting things. But then again, I think a lot of this over my time was also the realization that as an industry, there's a lot of stuff that we don't talk about, especially in leadership, because we do these really candidly dumb things, right? Like we love the beginning and the end. We love the 2 guys in the garage, we love the big launch. We love to fetishize design like it's art. But you know, in this point, if it actually has to answer for something, it's not art, it's called design. Understand the difference. But so 2 years ago, I started an absolute passion project, which was $200 and basically me talking to myself in my studio, which was a podcast called The Crazy One. Because as a leader, I spent 38 years of my life doubting myself. And that's why, so, and you saw it in the photo, that's why I have tattoos on both my arms, including one that's tattooed that says, here's are the crazy ones on my right arm. Great for setting a tone in a meeting. If you ever want to do something like that, I don't suggest tattoos for everybody, but if you do, it works really well. But this is my thing. And the podcast for me was to deal about the stuff that we don't talk about. It's to deal about things like emotion, like frustration and happiness. It's to be able to deal with things like gender bias that actually is rampant in this industry and nobody wants to talk about it. It's to take on this stuff and to really be honest and transparent about it. But so then 3 months ago, completely confused all my friends again, because they're like, why are you gonna go work for a software company? And so what I'm doing is that I am, and it sounds dangerously like something out of an episode of Silicon Valley, the head of design transformation at Envision. Which means that what we are doing is repositioning as a company to recognize the fact that it is not the design tools that are holding back companies. It is not their ability to even do better looking work. What is holding back design teams is all the crap that surrounds that work. And so my job is, how do I go in and work with, and I'm insanely lucky that our clients are 80% of the Fortune 100 brands out there in the world. So if there is a brand that you love, they're more than likely up here. So to go in and work with their design teams to elevate the impact of design, not the design team, design inside of these companies. And so again, it is a fascinating ability to go in. I just still can't believe this job exists, but this is what it is that I get to do for a living. But this is the question, right? Why the hell does my team exist? And the harsh reality that I will point out to anyone is that we exist in a time where we have the ability to impact business in ways that we have not seen since the Industrial Revolution. The fact that there is a head of design at a bank, the fact that you see the rise of design thinking, which is 60 years old, so it's still weird to me that everybody thinks it's new, but like there's a lot of this sort of stuff because we had the era of data. And now all of a sudden we have the era of creativity because we have to compensate and come back the other way. But the problem that we're having is that most of us are blowing this opportunity because we don't understand how to take advantage of this opportunity. I don't know who you are, but I love you. Okay, I'm hugging you. I'm hugging you later. So here's the thing, what's getting in our way? And so this is what we're gonna do today, super fast, I'm gonna be around all day, we can talk about this more, is that look, the biggest challenge that most of us have in this room is that what we are facing has got so little to do with design. Because that's the thing, it's about politics and strategy and all these other things. What I'm gonna do today is, so I have the opportunity to talk to some of the world's best design leaders about their problems, to be able to help them with their teams. So I'm gonna go over the 5 questions that I get the most and to give you some great questions, some answers about what those are. The first one, are my leadership problems normal? This is a huge one that I get all the time of like, am I weird? Is it okay that we have problems? Am I strange? Am I alone? Trust me, this talk is gonna be therapy, get used to it. The second one, how do you actually define and share your team's values? Do you even understand what the value of your team is to your organization? Because it is amazing how many people at really big companies can't answer that question. 3, how do I include more people in my process without losing control? This is, again, the push and pull on design thinking is that on the one hand, to be successful, we need to be more inclusive. But on the other hand, how does this not completely dilute and lose control of what I'm doing? 4, how do you actually lead as a leader while still leaving room for everyone's individual creativity? Again, the Steve Jobs quote is, if you're going to hire smart people, you should do this really strange thing called trusting them. It's a novel idea. We're looking into it. And then the last one. So I was talking to Andy. I know that it seemed like this was a big one. How do I lead remote teams? This is what most people do not know, because in addition to pioneering all the work that we're doing in design, Envision does this other little thing where we are a 700-person completely distributed company. We have no office. So if you want to talk to somebody about how to do remote teams, I'm probably a good person to be able to do that. But let's start with, are my problems normal? Because here is the thing, there is no formula for being a successful leader. I say this time and time again. I go and meet these teams and they're like, oh my God, we have problems. It's like, congratulations, you're doing it right. Because teams that don't work, what do? We do a whole bunch of work, we get a little bit of success, and it's like, holy crap, don't change anything. And then all of a sudden they aren't successful and can't figure out why. That might be why. But so again, 5 most common problems that leadership is going to run into. 1 is perspective. Because to be an effective leader, you need to be an insider and an outsider at the same time. An insider is that you need a tangible connection to what is going on. A tangible connection to the tools, to the process, to the clients, to actually understand what is going on. Like, I've dedicated my career to never being that guy who can't open a design file. Because literally, somebody asked me that the other day. They're like, should I work for a person that does that? The answer, no, you should not. Because again, if you cannot do that, this is not a person that understands. But at the same time, you need to have the long view of where your team is going. This is the classic trap where so often leadership, what they do is they will only innovate and lead as far as the next project in front of them. This is an extremely myopic way of looking at things. Like, one of the things that came out in the Samsung trial, so I won't get sued for saying it, if you ever go into Johnny Ive's office at Apple, he has the next 5 generations of every device laid out on tables. It doesn't mean that the iPhone 15 is going to look like that, but it does mean they're thinking about it. So again, your ability to have perspective is incredibly important. 2, progress. Progress is really hard. Why is that hard? Because the small problems are the ones that get fixed. Big ones take more time. So we end up fixing a ton of little things, and then we leave the big ones by the wayside, but the big ones are, again, why people will leave your team, because normally I'll describe this as the stack of pink elephants. Everybody knows that it's a problem. You're like, hey, that's a problem. We're like, yeah, we know. It's like, are we going to do anything about it? It's like, no, we'll just keep feeding them peanuts. And it's like, that makes absolutely no sense. Fear. People are afraid to speak up. Recently, Harvard Business Review did a study. 8.5 people, I don't know how they studied half a person, 8.5 people out of 10 said that they are afraid and will not completely tell the truth at work. So that as a leader, on an average day, if 85% of the people you're working with are not telling you the truth, you've got a massive problem about how do you lead that team. Futility. If you've been a team for any amount of time, that people will naturally just start to become skeptical. Why is anything going to be different? Why is this time going to be different? Especially if you've been in a position for any amount of time and then you come back and say, you know what, this is the moment where now I want to do something differently. Why is this time going to be different? But the last one, and this is the biggest one that I see time and time again, is comfort. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. People will do what it is that they know over and over again, even if it is against their own best self-interest, even if it's against the work. Because again, why? It's comfortable, it's easy. As creatives, we constantly have to fight against this. Because that's the problem, is that once you find something that works, you want to hold on to it. Not keep destroying and ripping up your process, but 1, we're a fickle bunch, and we tend to get really frustrated if the work we do tomorrow is not better than the work we do today, but also because then in that comfort, we'll start to become dissatisfied. Huge killer of leadership is the fact that you have to get people out of this. But so here's my thing, is that, look, let's just all agree on this, right? Having problems is not a problem. This is the way it should be. Like, I just was last week talking to the chief creative officer of a huge company who asked me if leadership should be lonely. That's an insane question, but it is so true. Because this is the problem, is that leadership in so many ways is about taking on these huge problems, protecting your team from about 60% of it, but it's okay to be able to do this. The key is, how do you find groups like this? How do you find cohorts? How do you, like, I just literally started this with a group of my friends where we call it the Creative Unicorn Therapy Hour, where once a month we get together and everybody brings one problem and we all talk about it. Just so that there's some forum for us to be able to do this. We also at Envision just launched another thing, if you are interested in it, look into it, called the Design Leadership Forum. It meets about once a quarter in every major city. You can go to apply to be a part of it. It is the top design leaders in every one of those cities getting together and just simply talking about what's going on and what are their problems and how can they help each other. Your team's value. This is the foundation of what goes wrong for so many teams and so many leaders. What this means is that there are basically two things that exist in this equation. One is a design team, two is a company. This can exist in one of four different ways. The first one is that is design as an external resource. This is the agency model. Sometimes this is the we're going to start dipping our toe in the design model. You have design as part of the organization. This means that we have design, but like whenever I started at Starwood or Citi, it was not the main reason for being. And so that has its own special issues. You have designed as core to the organization so that it's really important to the organization. It's a little bit closer to the center. Maybe we're a little bit more empathetic, but it's not completely where it's just integrated. And I think this is also the understanding is to really look at this and say, okay, out of these four different ways, it really divides into two different parts. And that what that sort of is that in general, this is the way the older guard companies are. This is where it'll be like creative services or something like that in the title tend to fall into this. Newer companies, whenever you look at Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, like all the ones we fetishize, Apple, Nike, they tend to be on this side where you look at more in core and integral. The reason why you need to understand where you fall in this continuum is for one extremely important reason, is because the ones that sit on this side are seen as a commodity to your company. The ones that sit on that side are seen as an asset. And that if you want to be successful, it is about taking a group from here and putting them there. Whenever I did at Starwood and Citi and everything else, this was the complete focus of my mission, was to be able to do this. Because this falls into the make it pretty category. This falls into the color in the sketch or the PowerPoint that we give you category. This falls into all those things that whenever you hear that line, your soul dies a little. That's this category. This is the one where, again, it's much more about actually design and the power of what that design is. But this also comes out of a very clear distinction that I think most people can't make, which is understand the difference between design and creativity. And what I mean by this is that I think for most people, do you understand the difference and understand how to separate them? Because a lot of people would say, look, Steve, okay, we have these two things. Isn't that really just the same thing? Just all one big idea? I would say au contraire. While they are interconnected, they are different. And this, again, is an incredibly important point to be able to understand because which one you base your team and your leadership style on will define your success. There are tons of people that whenever they ask me why do they not have a seat at the table, why are they not being more successful in what they're doing, I will point back to this. Because here's the problem, is that creativity is about problem solving. Everyone understands this. I can tell you, I spent 3 days with Fisher-Price trying to help them. Toys R Us is closed. They're trying to really go back and redo a lot of what's going on. Their whole thing is that if you go in and you actually watch children, everyone is creative. Everyone. We've just forgotten. Because you go into the play lab, you see kids who are superheroes and plumbers and like boys wearing boas and high heels and all kinds of stuff. We're all creative. Our jobs, our society, our education system has made us forget. It's put up walls and said, you know what, you can't make money at that. Wrong. But that's the thing. Design is then a visual expression of that problem solving. And this is the thing, is that very few people, very few companies truly appreciate design because design is a visual expression. So that's the problem, is that whenever you do this, every company sees value in creativity. Very few see value in design. So if what you're saying that my product to my company is design, then the problem is going to be they're going to see very little value in that because that's the make it pretty problem. Because this was the first thing that I did whenever I went into Citi was to be able to say, what we're going to do is base this in problem solving because everybody can be a part of that. But again, to understand the difference between design and creativity is incredibly important. So here's my thing. But bigger than that, understand that as a leader, your products are not pixels, they are not photos, they are not words. Your product that everyone needs to know you for is trust and confidence. Because no work, nothing of any substance is ever going to go out the door if you don't do two things. One, if they do not trust and have confidence in what you're going to do. I often would want to describe, call me crazy, just don't call me stupid. The other thing is that if you are unwilling to fail, you will never do anything if you are unwilling to fail. And trust and confidence is built out of the fact that you're able to do these things, to be able to push this, and to be the Sherpa that lets people know that you're going to get them through this. But this is your real, because if you talk to any leader who is successful, talk to them about the relationship they have with their CEO or with their CMO. This is always the thing they'll talk about first. But so make sure for your team and for yourself, the interactions that you are having, build this. Because again, if what you're building is that your designs look pretty, this is again why you're not trusted. This is why you're seen as an asset, not a real kind of something that can do great work. Next one, how do we include teams without losing control? And so, This is the problem. Creativity got a lot more complicated. A couple years ago, we could just make it pretty, so much simpler. This is where Dribbble and Pinterest are screwing us because somebody literally sent me this the other day. I talk about this all the time. Most popular comp that was on Dribbble, absolutely loved it. It made no sense as an interface, riddled with typos, but hey, it's pretty. We have to stop, like I said before, treating it like art. So generally, if this is our design process, we have all these different teams. More people need to be involved in our process. This always sounds great, but what does this actually look like if we're honest at most companies? It looks like this. You know, you all know, right? This is our problem right now, is that what this is a whole bunch of opinions about who's gonna scream louder, who's got more equity, or who's got more political capital that they can burn to be right. I will also argue that this is no process about creativity is right. I've been married for 14 years with my wife for 19 years because neither of us have ever been right. I will say that in public. I have said it on recordings before. But that's the problem, because somebody's right, somebody's wrong. But so instead of doing all of this, what we need to actually do is to put consumers at the center of everything. This was one of the biggest things that I did, again, when I came into City, was I changed it. And so every Thursday, what we did is we tested what we were working on. In the beginning, super guerrilla. Testing means I took a few of the people and we went down to the cafeteria and pulled people aside and showed them stuff and recorded it. Because that's the problem. This can't be opinion versus opinion. Nobody wins. Plus, at the end of the day, and I can't believe this needs to be a conversation in this day and age, we have this weird thing called a consumer. Maybe we should go talk to them. Can't believe that's something I need to tell companies on a regular basis, but here we are. But that's the thing, because if you put consumers at the center of everything, they're the source of truth. And if you talk to them on a regular basis, whether it's about button color, big concept, anything else like that, makes it so much easier because now there's a single source of truth that is not one opinion versus another. This is where we get into trouble. Creativity and design is insanely debatable. This is not. Another thing, separate ideation from execution, right? Because what we do is we turn a lot of our clients into tiny little drug addicts. Because what they do is they get really used to that creative process. They love creating. It's fun, it's interesting, it's different. We want more of that. And whenever you say, you know what, now we have to stop because we have to go build something, they still want that little hit. But this is the part where you need to understand that this is where you get into problems. Yes, there's a time for ideation, and then there's time for something called a backlog. So whenever that comes up, stick it in there, that's great. Separate those two things out. Have a process. I know, as a designer, there is nothing sexier than process. Woo! But this is the first thing that Josh and I were talking about this last night at dinner. You want to actually fix the team, start there. Because the thing is that you need to define what you need to be successful. I talk to teams all the time. I'm like, what do you need? They're like, we need these 5 things. I'm like, that's great, on a regular basis. How often do you get them? They're like, 2. It's like, okay, so you need 5 things, you get 2. It's a mystery why you don't do better work. But this is the thing, it is not sexy, but again, your ability to define what you need to be successful is insanely critical. So here's the thing. The thing that I am trying to get all companies to organize around is this mentality of build to think, not build to launch. Again, this is one of the reasons why I joined Envision, because for me, we need to be prototyping, we need to be testing, we need to be putting this in front of consumers every single chance we get, which means that most people right now, what they do, even on our platform, is you go through, we have an ideation session, we do a brainstorm, we do a bunch of work, we load it up into our platform, then we put it in front of researchers, and then we actually kind of like, okay, now we'll prototype. No. You need to do concept testing. I can do a whole hour just on this. But you need to get to this place where we are building to think, not building to launch. And so again, our ability to bring consumers in and to be more open about this, the problem that it poses for us as leaders is it means you have to be confident and open. We are all inherently extremely insecure beings, which is why we struggle with that, but this is a big part of why we need to do this. The next part, how do I lead and still leave room for individual creativity? A huge problem. This is the inflection point where most leaders fail. The ability to actually go from being the executor to being the leader. So how do I still have the ability to influence these things, but again, leave space for my team? Because like I said, if you're gonna hire really smart people, you do this weird thing called trusting them. The rule that I'll teach every leader is this. It's called the 80-10, the 10-80-10 rule. And the way that I think about this is that the time that I spend my leadership really comes down to, these are the percentages that I want to spend my time. 10% of the time, I just want to leave the team alone. This means that they need to work through something. They need to think through something that I feel like they are best if they do it on their own. But this is 10% of the time. The vast majority of the time, what I want to do is to provide them with insights and opportunities. The worst thing that I can do is to say, this is my idea, go execute it. Nobody wants to work for that. Plus, I don't want little versions of me. It's creepy, it's kind of fascist. Like, it's not the right way to go about it. But this is my thing, is that what I want to do is to provide them with insights and opportunities. So again, if I see something that's wrong in a design, it's not go fix this and do this. It's that this is the problem with this, I need you to go figure it out. If they're struggling, this is the insight that I think that we're not thinking about. I need to leave space for them to create, but I still also need to leave space for me to be able to lead and guide this project. Because again, just because I'm a leader doesn't mean that I suddenly went stupid and that I can't do this. So again, there's this balance of how do I influence without completely overwhelming. And then the last 10% is something that we all know and we have all been there, and this is usually disproportionately bigger than it should be, is to tell them what to do. I'm out of budget, time, political capital, or patience, and at this point, shit just needs to get done, right? There's a business reality that we need to deliver, and that it's great that you want to go sit and wear a beret doing a watercolor of your spirit animal in the corner, but that time is over. You all just thought of somebody. You're not going to say the name out loud, but you all just thought of somebody. But so this is the thing, is that this ratio, if you're able to keep it in this ratio, I think really provides for the best creative leadership, because we're just different animals. Like I said before, we're inherently insecure. You give us a blank piece of paper and ask us to make a mark, the mark that we make is personal. So that again, the ability to respect that, to understand it, but this is the thing, is that we need to really create these kind of constructs where we understand, value, and grow everybody's creative process. Everyone has ideas differently. Everyone. The creative condition is a shared condition. Use methodologies like creative thinking to give it structure and form. But your ability to embrace this is really what makes up great teams. And then finally, how do I lead remote teams? This is a really interesting one. And so for me, up until 3 months ago, I thought I really had this down. At Citi, I was leading teams that were in St. Louis. I had them in Florida, Dallas, Singapore, Mexico City, all over the place. I'm like, I'm really good at this. No, I really wasn't. But so here's the thing, is you need holistically different behaviors and tools to work with remote teams. Because what I was doing, which was wrong, was saying, I'm going to use the same leadership constructs and the same ideas that I use with everybody in person. I'm just now going to do it over a conference call. It's amazing that doesn't work. But so here's the thing for this, is that what you need to do for starters is to rethink your tools so that they are cloud-based and collaborative for every single stage of your workflow. You cannot be passing files back and forth. You can't be doing things like that. And also, where's the biggest point that always breaks down whenever you work with remote teams? Ideation. Because typically what that is that there's a webcam pointed at a whiteboard in one of the offices where somebody is writing stuff down, everybody else is trying to shout things out, then we all take photos of it afterwards and send it around. Yeah, it's a mystery why that doesn't work. But so this is the only software plug I have in here, our least utilized tool, which I think is absolutely the most powerful, is one that we have called Freehand. This is where you can stick up to 300 people on an interactive whiteboard. And you can do all sorts of cool things, like you can actually upload from Sketch the comps to be able to actually go in and work on top of that. You can go in and everybody can work together collaboratively. You also then end up with an artifact afterwards that everyone can go back and use as a document to reference. It has fundamentally completely changed the way that I work. Because this is the thing, everyone can participate, everyone can be active in this. And so again, it is something that is incredibly cool. And with all of our tools, it's completely free to go try out. So you're gonna go back and try it out with your team. I would highly encourage you to do that. But there's a ton of these sort of collaboration tools that again, our play in this is to look at a fully connected workflow from the beginning to end. Because right now, the workflows are insanely fractured. And again, this is one of the big things that we're working to solve. Video calls, absolutely, instead of emails and phone calls. Because again, I can't help lead people if I can't see them. The ability to see the look on somebody's face, the ability to actually talk to somebody, and this used to drive me crazy, stop emailing everybody. Like I used to have that. It's like, you two people sit 2 cubes apart. Why are you emailing each other? Get up, stand over, talk to somebody, be weird. Just do something different. But this is the thing, is that whenever it comes to creativity, it's the dialogue and the back and forth that makes so much sense. And it's the thing that really leads to such better creativity. But here's the biggest one, also with remote teams, is that you have to actually empower vulnerability. Because remote teams will suffer in silence. Because that's the fact, even if you go down there, I've seen this as a leader whenever I worked with remote teams holistically, now as I work with all remote individuals. You go down there and what do you get? You get the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Everything's great, it's wonderful, we're fantastic, we're so happy. There's confetti, there's floats, people are dancing. But that's not, it's not the truth. Because what they do is that they sugarcoat it, because they know that they aren't the main office, or they know that they aren't the main point of contact. So empowering vulnerability to make sure, like one of the things that we do, that I've done with my teams for a long time, has been called like anxiety parties. Let's get together and let's talk about like, what are we doing wrong? What are the things that actually scare us? I did another thing called the belly flop of the week, which means I would give a bottle of champagne to basically the person who had admitted that they fucked up the biggest that week. Because culturally, I wanted to institute the fact that failure and vulnerability are a part of our team, and externalizing it was our superpower. Internalizing it was going to kill us and make us really mediocre. But here, that's the thing. At the end of the day, if you don't trust the people you work with, it is never going to work. Because this is the failure of most leadership. I've been a victim of this for a really long time. This idea that if you're not in front of me, you're not working. That if I slack you or something, you don't write back right away, you're not working. Okay, well, if we're all in the office and I'm in a meeting and you need something, I'm not going to be around right away anyway. But again, I think that this is what so much of it comes down to. But you also have to hire people differently. If you're going to hire people who you know are going to be away from leadership, they need to be wired differently. They need to be much more self-started. Again, you can't hire the same profile for your remote teams and think it's going to work. A few final thoughts in the last couple of minutes that I have in my last 3 minutes. Whew. Okay. Look, and if you've ever seen me do any of these talks, for me there's a really simple decision whenever I come and talk at any of these conferences. You come and spend 2 days, you're in cohorts, you learn a ton of stuff, everybody scribbles down notes furiously. I'm always amazed because I see people whenever I do these talks, they come up to me afterwards, they're so enthusiastic, like this is great, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna change my company, this is gonna be awesome. And I see them at an event next year and they're trying to sneak out the back of the room. And I see them. Leadership is hard. There's no playbook for it. It is so often lonely. It is so often to go in and do something different, you'll be vilified as the one who is crazy, you'll be vilified as the one who is different. But the thing is that whenever it's successful, those same people that vilified you will seek you out for the exact same reason. Because of your willingness to go against the status quo and to do something different and to show them the way. But at the end of this, you're going to be faced with a really simple decision when you go back and work with your teams. One of two things is going to happen inevitably. Either you're going to go back and you're going to start making changes, or you're going to start making excuses. And as a leader, the question for each of you is going to be, if the excuses outnumber the changes, what are you going to do? If you accept it, nothing changes. You are the one that has to show the way. You are the one that has to be that source of change and inspiration and hope in a time when other people may not see it. Whenever they get comfortable and you have to prove and help them push through that. But that's the decision. And because here's the other thing. Leadership is not big moments. Leadership is not standing up in front of a room of people at some quarterly meeting and making some big stump speech that goes nowhere. Leadership, very interestingly, the best categorization I ever heard of this was Simon Sinek described it. Leadership, a lot like creativity, or creating any changes like falling in love. I can't tell you the moment that I fell in love with my wife. I can tell you that there were a lot of little moments that added up to something really big. And that's what leadership is. That's what coaching is. It's all the little decisions that you make every day. It's the investment you make in your team every single day, in every single conversation, and every single interaction that add up to something that really is big and counts. And so this is the simple ratio that you're left with. Because for me, this is what I've learned in my career. People come up to me and they're like, oh, you're so lucky. In all candidness, fuck that. There's not a single part of my career that had anything to do with luck. It has been a ton of hard work. It is the fact that every single day success is a choice. Are you going to make the good decision or the great decision? Are you going to take the easy road or have the hard conversation? Those choices are what define leadership. Those choices are what define great teams inevitably. That's the secret sauce. This is why we're going to write books on creativity and leadership and all those things until the cows come home. Because there's not a magic answer. But so, if you have any interest in this, I've got about 65 episodes now of The Crazy One that I've been doing for about 2 years. You can check that out on all major podcast platforms. As Envision, we take investing in the creative community and especially the leadership community extremely seriously. The Design Leadership Forum is something that again, like I said, I would tell you to definitely go check out. We're rolling out design leadership camps where we're actually putting leaders together for a week at like cool locations to be able to come together for that. The Design Genome Project is something that we launched a year ago, which is actually an in-depth look, including org structures and like all kinds of different things of the world's best design teams. And we're going to be launching some other really cool stuff here in the near future. But so with that, I think somehow I made it through 96 slides in 35 minutes. I'm going to go pass out. Man, I've never done a talk on a Saturday morning before. I always had a rule that like you never talk on like day 2 at an event in Vegas. This may get added to that. We'll see. I don't know.
Well, hopefully
Like you guys were cool. The room was small, so it worked. But like, whew.
it's okay. Hopefully, it won't be too cruel and unusual.
No, well, hey, bring it on.
All right, so we got some good stuff for you. Once again, hashtag AIGA LeadCon. Just post your questions. We're going to go through that. I have a couple lined up, so please stack your questions, and I'm going to go through them. You talked a lot about changing culture, like as an overall theme, which is, I think, fascinating. And you gave some really good practical insights on working with your team.
Yeah.
This one is from @KimballScott. What are the biggest obstacles with culture change, like in an org, when you're going outside of your team? So what are your biggest obstacles, and how do you get over them?
The biggest obstacle is you have to change thinking, not behavior. Because the problem is that whenever most companies try to do culture change, they roll out like a new set of values, and like they all add up to, it's like bonus points if they're an acronym that make a word. And again, you all just thought of something. But this is the problem. If you want to change culture, the easy thing is that most people just come in and you use a bunch of new buzzwords and things like that, and like that's great and that's interesting, but all you're changing is behavior. Behavior is the expression of a problem. For me, it's about how do you get to the core? How do I actually change the way people think? And I think like that's why for me, like I use methodologies like design thinking or things like that, because what I want to do is to use things that are a Trojan horse for change. Like the real superpower of design thinking is that it brings everybody to the table. And that it creates organizational change, and it creates change in thinking without an org chart, without an acronym, without a power play, that it just simply says by the power of inclusion, because what I can do is to take advantage of the fact that people will psychologically support what they're a part of. And again, I think there are different ways of doing it. Ideally, if you can find an executive that will help support that and you can do it top down, great. If not, find your cohort. Find the other people that you can work with and start to find success. Because again, if you are in any sort of an organization, the thing that is always really interesting is that we're basically like a bunch of kids on Christmas. Whoever has the shiny new toy is who we want to go play with. So that if you come together and you have any success doing this, all of a sudden everybody's going to come running. And here's the move, is that whenever they come running, the other thing that you do is don't say yes immediately. They're going to come like, oh my God, this is great. I want to be a part of this. Say, you know what? I'd love to. I'm not quite sure your team's ready to do that. They will crawl through broken glass from New Jersey to prove that they are ready to do this. But I think a lot of it really is, like I said, don't just triage the behavior. The behavior is the easy thing. The behavior is the expression. If you cannot find ways to get to the underlying thinking, which is the true problem, you're not going to be able to affect culture change. And I think that the other thing is to actually define what you stand for. And that this is also a topic that I'm not going to talk a ton about because Josh, everybody be cool, he's sitting right there. Josh Higgins from Facebook, the work that the Analog Research Lab does, trust me, I get the amazing opportunity to look into a ton of companies. What the Research Lab does is far and away the greatest expression and greatest way to build culture and to change that I've seen in any company. So we're doing this sort of like buddy comedy thing where I open days and he closes days. This is like the 4th time we've done it. We're in talks with Netflix. It'll be a great show. But again, I think come back, because I think the work that he's done, I think he's really the expert that I'd let finish that answer. All right.
So we'll punt that till later on today. But thank you. It was
Sure.
really good, really concise. Tell me about a time when you had to manage up to difficult leadership, and what'd you do?
So every job.
Okay. So just pause. You're not alone.
No. I mean, because that's the thing, right? Is that inherently, I mean, like the easiest ones when I worked in ad agencies, right? Because creativity is the heart of the house. It's the reason for being. Everybody gets the value. Even at Starwood, I had a CEO from Nike. I had a CMO who came from Nike. But again, at the end of the day, we were about putting heads in beds. Right? Design was not the reason for being. So again, whenever I talk about understanding what my value is, whenever I talk about understanding organizationally, how do I advertise that? Because most of my work I do in digital, and they're like, oh, should I learn to code? I'm like, no, you should go learn business. Because if you can't understand how to express what you do in terms that they understand, if you can't figure out how do you put a KPI and a metric around what you do, this is where it's like pretty won't get money. You know, if I wanted a design system, it's about me running 2 projects in parallel to show you that I can save you 40% on average by having a design system on the design and on the code side. I can tell you that as an in-house team, on a regular basis per head, it is about 2.5 times cheaper than an agency head. So again, it's about how do I speak in a holistically different language? How do I bring things like empathy, putting consumers at the center of things that are universally acceptable, and then design just happens to be the visual expression of that. But no, I think every because we're just different, right? And again, this is our challenge. This is why, again, my team exists, is we're at this intersection between, there's an unprecedented demand for creativity like we have not seen, like I said, since the Industrial Revolution, that sits inside of a corporate structure or company structures that so often will undermine that at every single turn. Because things like uncertainty, the ability to do things like if you actually want to be innovative, you don't know where you're going to end up when you start, these are things that give executives full-blown panic attacks. So again, it's our ability to navigate those two things, but to speak and to talk about value and construct it in ways that they understand so that they will start to say like, look, I don't really fully get what he does, but the company seems to get it. It gets us results. It's moving the bottom line. Like, plus you also need to P.T. Barnum the shit out of your success. Like make a video, do something to advertise so that people understand how it's making a difference. Because don't just simply think like, oh, they're going to get it. No, they don't.
You and I had a chat, I don't remember what this, but I think it was a role on your team that you posted for.
Yeah.
And you got like 1,000 resumes.
I did.
Candidly, I would have bet the over on that one.
Yeah, we probably have the over right now, but yes.
Fantastic. But you said that there were 7 that really stood out.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us really quickly about those 7 and why.
Yeah, I think so hiring to me is a broken process in all of our industry. One, I think as designers, most people have absolutely no idea what their brand is. Because we are in this really difficult position, but because the team that you're on right now wants to prioritize the team, the we, that you are part of something bigger. The problem is the next job you want prioritizes the I. What have you done individually? What have you done as an accomplishment? So again, your ability to build your brand needs to deal with that. But the other reason why I also tell most people to build their brand is because most resumes I see are like buzzword bingo. It's a whole lot of words that say absolutely nothing. Because everybody wants to be a generalist. Everybody wants to, we do all these things. Create demand, gamification. It's like all this, it's like, who cares? But it's like every agency has some British planner that pronounces it process. But the thing is that most people have actually no idea what they're good at. Or they don't have any idea to claim it. And so that's the thing, is like your resume, your portfolio, your LinkedIn, whatever it is literally your first introduction. And if that is generic and forgettable, again, in the field of 1,000 resumes, of 100 resumes, of 10 resumes, how do you actually understand what this person is about? And so I would say not only do it when you're looking for a new job, but I think you need to have a brand to be better at your own job. Because as a leader, the worst person I can have on my team is somebody who doesn't know what they want. Because I'm going to guess at where they want to go with their career. And by the time I get it right, they probably will have run out of patience and left. So this is why I also look for people who have a very clear, I don't want to hire anybody that wants to retire in the role I hire them at. I want people who want to grow and to be able to do these things, but they also need to have a really clear articulation of that. And because that's the thing, the 2 questions that I ask in every interview, which inevitably screw everybody up. 1, can you tell me how you have an idea? Like if I actually asked you to write down what are the steps that you go through that you have an idea, could you do it? The other one is, can you tell me what you need to be happy? I've had people who have come back 2 days later, written me like, I haven't slept in 2 days, asshole. Because I don't know the answers to that, and I feel like I really need to. But these are the questions that, like, again, if you don't know yourself, that is a career-limiting mistake.
That's a good one. Okay. This one is from at K Van Crussell. This will be really quickly. So how does one get a very sales-oriented way of marketing to start talking about the value of design?
I think that a lot of it comes with, for me, you can't argue with results. Because that's why I said, I think the sales way a lot of the times is like, look how pretty it is, look how well designed it is, again, it's not a value proposition that most companies really understand. And I think that you need to start, in many cases, small. Find a small success. Find people that you can work with. Document what that success is. Start to build on that. Start to grow it out. Start to have a methodology and to do things that you can start to advertise and build on. Because I think, again, that's the thing, is that rarely do you get the big bang of a CEO or somebody who says, like, look, because like even when I went to Citi, it was incredibly rare because I had a CEO who said, I know that we need design and creativity. I have no clue what the hell that means. And I literally went through a process of, I actually would not take the job. I made them give me their digital executives for 10 days straight, including over a weekend, where we did a design thinking exercise about the future of a bank. Because I needed to see the look in their eyes to actually know if they were serious, if it was lip service. Because this is the other problem that you're going to run into, is that so many executives right now have watched enough TED Talks that they sound educated about design. They're like, oh no, we know that. But if you scratch beneath that veneer, there's really not much there. But again, I think a lot of it is really in looking at again, how to use data as your friend to be able to measure success. How do you be able to kind of drive empathy, to drive putting customers at the center, to drive creativity organizationally or empathy or any of those things. And this is the problem, right? And this is why my team exists. There also is not a magic bullet to this. Every organization is different. Sorry to break it to you, every company is dysfunctional. It's just how functional are they with their dysfunction. Like I've taken like the developers I went and worked with at Apple who literally looked like someone told them Santa wasn't real whenever they realized that like Apple has problems. But again, like every company has that. Again, it's just looking at your individual set and trying to figure that out.
Fantastic. Stephen, thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Good job. Thank you.